Welcome back to Shravanam TV, and today we're going to be talking about dark matter. Dark matter and dark energy. And, this might just earn us a Nobel Prize because, and let's just go right to the charts here. What we're discussing today is our universe, and we're going to be looking at it from a paradigm that most of us are not aware of. And this is the Vedic paradigm from the Vedic knowledge, Vedas. And according to the Vedas, the universe is actually a finite entity. It has a size, and that size, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but I don't want to get too technical, but I just want to give you the basic idea that whatever the size of the universe is, we're going to speak of it in relationship to its shell. So the concept is that the hollow core, the universe itself is shaped like an egg, okay? So this is what we're looking at here on the map. And the inner core of that, so an egg means you have a shell, and then you have the inside of the shell, which is filled with some fluid and some a yolk, you would say, and they have that, the chicken develops in that also, right? So this concept is that it's like an egg in shape, and the inner core, if you can imagine, it's half filled with water, okay? So that's represented here. We're zooming in on that inner core, half filled with water, and the other half is space, okay? And that's the space that you and I see. So we're looking out into space, and this part right here, this section is space, and this is water. So below us is the water, and the planets are floating above the water in this area, the space. Now this area is the inner shell, the first layer of the shell of the universe, which is amazingly 10 times the core of the universe. So this is the core, and the shell is 10 times the thickness of the diameter of the core. So then the next level, the next layer of the shell, now this, of course, is the inner shell is made of earth. And we're going to get back to what that actually means. It's not like dirt, okay? It's something very unique, and it amazingly ties into modern scientific theories of dark matter. And this is the key to the whole thing we're discussing today. Then we get to the next layer of the shell, which is made of water. And that's 10 times the diameter of Earth, of this inner shell. So I'm not sure, this is not being shown to scale, but we're just giving you the conceptual, this is a rough sketch of that. But then the next layer is fire, which is 10 times this complete inner section. Then the next layer is air, which is again 10 times, and then ether, which is again 10 times. These are the gross, the punch, you say the 5 great elements, and how they make up the shell of this one universe. And we hear that there's many universes. We're just talking about one universe here for the sake of discussion. Now there's other layers beyond the gross material elements. There's also subtle layers, which are not so important to discuss in terms of physics. These are more like metaphysical layers. But in any case, for the sake of thoroughness, we'll discuss. There's a next layer is of mind, which is 10 times, then intelligence, which is 10 times that, and the last layer is of ego, which is 10 times whatever has been discussed so far. So we can get this idea of how big, relatively speaking, the universe is in relation to what we see. And all these elements and their energies are unmanifest. These are all considered unmanifest energy. these are all considered manifest energy, and from that energy, it's drawn into the inner core to manifest what we see in terms of planets, stars, space, whatever we see in space in terms of planets, stars, gases, what have you, light. These are the planets, stars, the visible mass, which according to scientists make up around roughly 4 to 5%. This is roughly 4 to 5% of the mass of the universe, what they can measure electromagnetically. And the interesting thing is that all this mass that they're seeing in space, the galaxies and the planets and solar systems, they're actually all moving away from each other. And this is known as the red shift. Right? You can measure that, and you can see that things are moving away from each other at a certain rate. I don't want to get into specifics. You can look that up. So what's happening here is, according to our understanding of the Vedic model of the universe, which I believe may explain what we're seeing, which is this. So first, to understand what's happening here, so now we see dark energy. It's generally thought to be a homogeneous, spread throughout the universe equally, dark energy. That's the main theory. And so what's causing this dark energy? Where is it coming from? And what is the dark matter? Dark matter accounts for about 26% to 28% of the matter in the universe. And they can't see it, and they can't find it, but they know it's there by its effects, by what we see in terms of physics, in terms of rotation of the planets and the galaxies and the speed and everything that's happening there. There has to be more mass than what we're seeing, because otherwise it wouldn't be happening the way it's happening. So that 4% that's visible through electromagnetic imaging, radio telescopes and whatnot, it's not what you would predict. In order to see what we're seeing, we would predict there would have to be more mass, and that's what they're calling dark matter, because they can't see it. So we're going to try to explain today what may be causing that. And basically, first we have to look at what is the nature of this Earth's shell, because it's the most prominent source of mass in this theory, in this, not theory, but whatever you want to call it, this model, this paradigm that's been in existence for thousands of years. It's mentioned in the Bhagavat Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll write that for anyone who wants to reference that. In fact, that's available. Srimad Bhagavatam is available online in English and in many other languages, but you can get it online in English at vedabase.com or vedabase.org also. So that's your reference link there. You can look up Srimad Bhagavatam. And I believe the main is the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's divided into 12 cantos. And the 5th canto specifically speaks to what we're discussing here today. So that's our reference source for what I'm talking about. And this was written over 5,000 years ago by Vedas. He's the original author. In fact, he's written all the Vedic literatures down for the first time. He's the compiler of the Vedas. I don't think he authored everything originally, because many things were, actually everything was transmitted by oral reception before the invention of books. So he's the first one to compile all the oral traditions into written form, and that was done historically 5,000 years ago. And the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, all the Upanishads, the original Vedas, he's compiled all of that. So the final summary, the book that explains the entire Vedic knowledge, his final writing was a book called Srimad Bhagavatam, and that basically includes the summary of everything that he's ever written about. Anyway, back to the inner shell. So the earth. So what is this earth? So basically, this shell, we have to understand the nature of the molecules and the nature of atoms. Now, what's happening here is that an atom is, what scientists say is that the space between atoms is like if you put a bird, like a canary, inside of a football field. Okay, this is like a 300 meter by 300 meter stadium, and even bigger than that probably, but let's just say a football field, 300 meters. So, and you put a bird in the middle of another football stadium, so the relative size of that bird to the space separating them is the size, the proportion of atoms separated from each other. So we can just imagine mostly our bodies and all objects and mass in this universe is primarily composed of space. Okay? There's hardly any matter to speak of in relation to space. So that's the ether shell. So the last shell of the material elements, the gross elements, is ether. And that's the most prominent. And space is made of ether. Basically, ether means space. Now, I'm bringing this up because we have to conceptualize what this inner shell is made of. And this is a new substance for science. Actually, it's not new because they've actually understood through inference of the existence of this, which is what they're calling dark matter. And we're going to try to explain today why it's dark and why you can't see it. So if you go on any scientific site and understand the theory behind dark matter, is number one, it's going to be, we're also going to try to tie this in, we haven't fully worked it out, but the dark matter and its relationship to black holes. Okay? So I believe there's a correlation, there's a definite link between dark matter and black holes, and we're going to try to discuss that also. But what we're getting at here is that this earth means all the atoms that comprise all matter that's listed in the periodic table, right? We have the periodic table in science, which gives all the chemicals, all the molecules, all the different types of metals, all the different types of chemicals. So just imagine taking all that and all this mass, all this 4% of visible mass, and removing all the ether from it. Okay? All these atoms contract and they come right together on top of each other. So now instead of being separated by football fields, they're not separated by anything. So that's the most densest form of matter that we can imagine, because there's absolutely zero ether. There's zero space separating these atoms, and they're all mixed together. So that's what, when we say earth shell, we're talking about that. Now, furthermore, remove all the air from that. There's no air in it. And furthermore, remove all fire from that. There's no fire element. So now the fire element, we understand from Srimad Bhagavatam, gives rise to vision. Right? We can go back to ether element. The ether element gives rise to sound. Right? Sound travels through space, through ether. Then the air element gives the sense of touch. Because of air, we can feel things. So this dark matter would not make any sound. It would not feel like anything. There would be no sense of touch. And it would not be visible. You wouldn't be able to see it. And that's exactly the definition we get anywhere in science about dark matter. Go to Wikipedia. Even Wikipedia, the first thing they talk about dark matter is you can't perceive it with electromagnetic instruments or even the eye. Right? Because, why is that? Because there's no fire element in it. Then H2O, water shell, gives taste, right? The sense of taste comes from water, actually. And without water and this earth element, it also wouldn't taste, if you put it in your mouth, it wouldn't taste like anything. There would be no taste. So it's pure earth, pure mass, and that's the reason you can't see it. And the amazing thing is, it's kind of like they say, having an elephant in your house. We're surrounded by it. It's something we can't see, yet we're completely, the universe, the inner shell that's completely surrounding us is what's surrounding that. So I would say, based on what science has discovered, that 26%, if we do the calculation of, whatever mass is influencing, I don't know how thick it would have to be considered, but let's just say the shell itself, the influence of the inner lining of the shell would compromise 26% of the mass of the universe, which would be called dark matter. And the density and gravitational pull of that ether, it's like, basically like a singularity, like a black hole. That there's an event horizon, that the event horizon is the entire universal core. So everything is moving in all directions towards the shell because of its density. And that's causing the red shift. And that's causing everything to move away from itself, which would be the center, more or less the center. Of course, now when we talk about it, remember the shape of this universe, we're talking about an egg shape. Right? So now if we take it that way, and you put water here, and let's say from some point these planets start emitting. And science has pretty much, I believe they've found, through radio telescope, they found that point, which is the oldest region in the universe. By calculation, they say it's a bluish area. Okay, they found a patch which is the oldest part of the universe, and it has a blue color to it. They haven't been able to focus on that, and from there they say stars are emitting like anything. They're like pouring out at a rapid rate. So they're looking back in time, right? Because you're looking at how many light years away. They're looking back at time at the beginning of the universe, and they're seeing all these stars being created. So there is a point in the Vedic paradigm where the creator of this universe is sitting, and from his point, planets and the entire manifestation of the mass of this universe is being emitted, being created by him. So that being is called Brahma. Those who are familiar, they know who is Brahma. So Brahma, so that's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can go there and look at that. But it definitely correlates with the Vedic paradigm. So you have this creation going on of stars, and they're getting ejected from him from one point, and then what happens is, due to the physics of the mass of dark matter, which is the shell, the inner shell, and the nature of gravity and whatnot, so they're being set into rotation. Means they start orbiting. And as they orbit, they start spreading out. Means they're orbiting him, and then as time goes on, they go further and further and further and expand throughout the limits of the space within this universal egg. And I think that's really what dark energy is all about. It's pulling the planets as they get created from the center point. It's pulling them out towards the shell. And finally, what would happen theoretically when the planets make contact with the shell? This is what I'm calling a possibility. This has to be further looked at by scientists. But this could be the contact point when the event horizon for the shell, the dark matter, which we can call that the ultimate black hole. We're surrounded by a black hole. That when they actually when a planet that was created here finally comes out after billions of years. Science says around, 14 billion years or something, whatever that is. I don't want to get into specifics because I'm not talking about scientific measurements, but I want to talk about principles here. But let's say when a planet that's created finally comes in contact with the shell, what would you expect to happen? Like any black hole, it would eject X-rays, gamma rays, what have you. The fire, the water, the air, the ether would come out of it and leave, and the Earth would get absorbed back into that shell. So it would become a singularity again. Means it would be decompressed and or compressed. The atoms would be compressed, and the Earth particles. The particles of Earth would merge with the shell, and the other elements, Earth, which means water, fire, air, and ether, would be released in the form of X-rays, gamma, the things that we see when something enters into a black hole. So because we're sitting here, let's say we're sitting here, let's say Earth is here, this black one. We're measuring, our radio telescopes are going in a direction and they hit this shell. So what would you expect to happen? Well, nothing would happen because you wouldn't see it. So it could be, that the radio waves are bending. When it comes into this event horizon, it either gets absorbed or it may get repelled, which means it's kind of, your line of sight is going in a spiral direction, maybe. Means you think you're seeing in a straight line, but you're not. So that's why they say the universe, I'm saying that may be why when scientists look out through their telescopes, they don't see any limit. It just keeps going and going because there's no direct line of sight possible beyond the shell, due to the nature of the shell being free from any type of electromagnetic element. So it could be distorting the vision of the telescopes. And I would expect definitely that to be happening. So we need to do the physics of that. If there was such a thing as dark matter that didn't, what would happen in theory when you project your electromagnetic radio telescope at it? How would that affect the perception of that radio wave? What would it look? What would you expect to happen? We need to start thinking about that, and that's going to really second guess all of our astronomical observations of the universe and how we measure it and what we think about it. So I think that's creating some type of an illusion, optical illusion, like a mirage in space, like we have mirages in the desert or on the water. So also in ether. Or in all these elements, there's an element of illusion, mirage. So when you're looking at Earth, you see water in the desert. When you're looking at water, you see land on the water. When you look in fire, what do you see? When you look at air, the illusions are there also. And when you look into space, ether, there's also potential for illusion. So I think we need to second guess our science and not be proud and think that we know everything because we can see everything. Obviously, science is saying that, practically 96% of the mass of the universe we can't see. That's called dark matter and dark energy. So we shouldn't be too proud of the fact that we can only see 4% of the mass that we know exists in this universe. And in order to understand more of what is really out there, I think the Vedic paradigm, better than any other, seems to explain all these phenomena: dark matter, dark energy, redshift, and all the other anomalies that scientists are working very hard. So I invite everyone to look at Srimad Bhagavatam more closely. Go to Vedabase.com. And if the Nobel Prize comes up for this, then you know where to come. That's right. Shravanam TV. You can send us the money today.